Of the Trump administration's dealings with Ukraine, chief among them, Rudy Giuliani's entanglements there on behalf of the president, and now he's saying he would testify in a Senate trial.
I would testify, I would do demonstrations, I'd give lectures, I'd give summations, or I'd do what I do best, I'd try the case. I'd love to try the case. I don't know if anybody would have the courage to give me the case. But if you give me the case, I will prosecute it as a racketeering case, which I kind of invented anyway. So it's been 30 years ago, but let's see if I can still do it.
It seems pretty unlikely that the Republican-held Senate will call for his testimony or take him up on his offer to, quote, try the case. Joining me now with the president in Florida, NBC News' Hans Nichols and Politico national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand. Hans, Rudy says he would testify. Does the president want him to?
Yeah. That's the question, and I think what you heard from Rudy right there is making an audition not just to testify, but also to prosecute the case.
Yeah.
Or at least the defense. Because when you heard the president, when you heard Rudy say there, anyone that had the courage to do that, there's only one person that can hire Rudy Giuliani to defend the president of the United States, and that's the president of the United States. So last night it seemed like an audition, black tie audition. There was a lot of falderall at the party last night. They were heading into the New Year's Eve celebration. Rudy there, of course, with the president, someone that he has access to on a regular basis. So if he wants to make his case publicly why he should represent the president, he's just done that, and he obviously has an opportunity to do it privately. We don't know, though, to what extent White House officials would sign off on that, or if they'd need to sign off, because whenever you ask a White House official on is Rudy Giuliani still consulting the president, he's still the president's attorney, all they say is that as far as we know, Rudy Giuliani is still one of the president's personal attorneys. Allison?
Hans, the president saying again last night that he is fine with the Senate trial. Let's play that.
I don't really care. It doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, I'd be very happy with the trial because we did nothing wrong.
So, Hans, does the president want to see Republicans forcefully defend him in a trial? Could that give Democrats some leverage while they try to negotiate?
It gets back to the short trial versus the long trial.
Yeah.
The president's professing to be agnostic on this matter. He says he doesn't really care. He's also said that he'd sort of leave it up to Mitch McConnell on whether or not witnesses were called. You know, at other moments, the president seems to suggest that he wants a trial because he wants this in his rearview mirror. Then he seems to say that actually not having a trial reveals the fundamental weakness of the case that the House Democrats had when they offered to impeach him or successfully voted to impeach him. So I think we get different messages from the president, and it's clear that's part of the strategy, is to keep his opponents flat-footed, to wrong-foot his opponents, and to try to keep them guessing on what he actually wants. And we still don't have any indication there's been any conversation of substance between Mitch McConnell and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, because that is the conversation that needs to happen if you're going to have rules for the road that would allow Nancy Pelosi to transmit those articles. Allison?
Natasha, Rudy Giuliani's made some similar comments in the past. He tweeted last week, a trial in the Senate would not only reveal how unlawfully the Democrats have conducted this impeachment inquiry, it would also expose the corruption that stretches far and wide in the Democratic Party. This is why Pelosi has halted the hashtag impeachment sham. What's he talking about here, Natasha? I mean, what does he think he can uncover if he were allowed to try the case, if you will?
I think Giuliani's goal, and it has been for quite some time, has been to shift all of the attention towards the Bidens and towards the allegedly corrupt former ambassador to Ukraine, Masha Yovanovitch. All of this, of course, being tied to his work in Ukraine, being tied to his business interests, his financial interests there. So this is not someone who is, if he were to come testify, would necessarily be the most credible witness, because on top of all of that, on top of his role in this shadow foreign policy campaign, he's also the subject, potentially, reportedly, of a criminal investigation in the Southern District of New York. His associates have been handed subpoenas asking for their communications with him, any records that they have of financial transactions to Giuliani's firm. So this is not someone who the president's allies want him to be connected with, because Giuliani is potentially in a lot of trouble stemming from his foreign lobbying work. And he also is under a counterintelligence investigation stemming from his ties to foreign officials. So he may be trying to shift the attention here to things that he believes could help the president. But at the same time, it's very hard to believe that Republican senators are going to want this kind of circus in the trial, regardless of whether or not the president believes that it could help his case.
Natasha, you mentioned his associates. One of them, Lev Parnas, who's now facing campaign finance charges, says that he wants to share information with congressional lawmakers. Do we have any sense of what we could possibly learn there?
There's a lot that Lev Parnas apparently has to offer here. He has the content of his iPhone, he has video recordings, he has tape recordings, all stemming, of course, from his interactions with Rudy Giuliani and the president. He met with the president several times, according to reports, to discuss this shadow foreign policy campaign in Ukraine, to pressure officials there to investigate the Bidens and to fire the former ambassador. So he could reveal a lot to the House Intelligence Committee about what the Democrats believe was a conspiracy here to solicit interference by the president in the 2020 election. So not only could he potentially incriminate Giuliani in that scheme, he could also throw the president under the bus, because he is very angry that the president has decided to distance himself from Parnas and Giuliani.
I have to ask you one more Giuliani question. Whatever became of all that information he promised from that recent trip he made to Ukraine?
Is this to me or Hans?
Oh, I'm sorry, Natasha, to you. Sorry about that.
You know, that's a great question. You know, I think that's a question that a lot of the president's allies have had as well. Senator Lindsey Graham said, look, if you have evidence from Ukraine, then either put up or shut up, instead of going out onto the airwaves and professing to have all of this information that might exonerate the president. Why don't you just give it to the Senate, give it to us to investigate? But I think Giuliani probably knows that that quote-unquote evidence is pretty flimsy, and he is trying to preserve also, I think, for as long as possible, his relevance in Trump world.
Natasha, Hans, thanks to both of you for hanging and talking about this with us today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, it's 2020, so buckle up. The rush is on to the first Democratic contest. But first, as we enter a new year, a look back at one of the most watched moments of 2019 on NBCNews.com.
It's an awful picture to look at as we watch this scene in various angles. None of them makes it any better. It's this famed piece of Europe, of Paris. Its most popular attraction now in flames there. And as we saw in one of the shots, the famous spire there now has burned and collapsed. But if you look at this picture right now, note the scaffolding that extends up about 4 levels and then crosses over and then 4 levels back down. So obviously a site we noted of construction. They've been doing a lot of restoration there. The history of Notre Dame.
St. Jude is a very